Last Pint Productions presents the New Way podcast. The New Way contains adult content and is recorded in advance. The following episode was originally recorded on January 12th, 2022. Listener discretion is advised.
So you were in Vietnam, if I'm not mistaken?
Yeah?
Were you in the shit?
Yeah, I was in the shit.
Last night, Darth Vader came down from planet Vulcan and told me that if I didn't take Lorraine out, that he'd melt my brain.
Here's how you get him. He pulls a knife, you pull a gun. He sends one of yours to the hospital, you send one of his to the morgue.
We came, we saw, we kicked its ass.
Everybody wants to be naked and famous. Everybody wants to be just like me, I'm naked.
Will you help teach me about this? What is it? A new way?
Hello and welcome once again to the New Way podcast, where we break down pop culture so you don't have to. Your host, Matt Shank, joined by several gentlemen this evening. Gentleman number one hails from Boynton Beach, Florida, and just watched his beloved Bulldogs take a national title. It's Mr. Benjamin Scott Wilson.
I was born ready.
You were okay. And bachelor number two, wearing a Kate Bush shirt and no longer wearing his Texas Women's Club. What was whatever the hat was? I don't remember. Lover
Women's Club. It's off to the side.
Lover of the Mick crab cake sandwich. It's Mr. Nicholas Santa Croce.
You know, I really wanted the topic of the show to be movies that set place in the capital of Alaska, but we don't talk about Juneau.
And number three, bachelor number three, Mr.
Audible head shakes.
It just derailed anything that was possibly happening here. So it's just Ryan and Patrick. Ryan and Patrick are here too.
Audible head shake.
I
just see teenagers and balls bouncing while running. You say Juneau, that's what I see.
I'm just glad that that tied into Juneau and was not just a random non sequitur from Patrick, because it could have gone either way.
We do shows about movies that take place in certain states, and I was playing off of that and making an Encanto reference.
I'm disappointed.
What else rhymes with what rhymes with Bruno? Give me one other rhyme.
Oh, okay.
Maybe.
Do you know?
I'm real disappointed that Nick ruined.
We don't talk about Juneau. There's the punchline. You got it.
We don't talk about Juneau.
But if you haven't seen Encanto, then Spoiler. You are not going to understand that reference.
Or you've never heard of TikTok.
You Encanto understand that reference.
Oh, God. Right. Oh, my God.
The dad.
Well, welcome to 2022. This is what we are now.
Do you think Jean Shorts is on TikTok? It's perfect for its format.
I think that we should actually start a Jean Shorts TikTok. I will get on TikTok just to start Jean Shorts.
And they can just use pretentious.
Seems like it.
Yeah, pretentious short films, just like artsy little. Yeah.
Oh, I thought you were talking about just jorts. I love celebrating jorts.
No. The name of the director is Jean Shorts.
Sorry, I forgot what podcast I'm on. Sorry.
Uh-huh.
It's a deep cut, Patrick.
It's
a deep you're supposed to be our number one fan.
I feel welcome to no end. Huzzah.
Well, welcome to Huzzah.
How is everyone's new year going so far? I'm talking to you, gentlemen, and you, listeners.
And by the way, Jean Shorts was knighted by the Queen this year, so it's Sir Jean Shorts, technically.
Great.
Put some respect on the man's name.
That's canon.
Well, to answer your question, I was doing okay. And then this happened. So now I'm doing all right. Yeah, I don't know what's going on with Ryan. If this is like a reveal or it was like a movie where we're about to find some random character.
He was just
of this podcast is called The Art of Interruption.
Yeah.
There's no art to it. You just get in there.
Matt, this falls under what Patrick would call a shit show episode.
Yeah! That's right.
Yeah! Sorry, my Peter, please go on.
Anyway, so yes, this is our first podcast of the year 2022. We hope you enjoyed our many podcasts last year and our final send-off. And we've got just, some fun things to talk about tonight before we get into a very I won't call it a niche podcast, but we're gonna basically be diving into the new Spider-Man movie for the second half of this podcast. Just so you know, we'll give you a spoiler warning before we get into that. But if you have not seen the new Spider-Man and you're worried about being spoiled, and I imagine at this point you've been spoiled based on the internet, but if you want to be a purist, you can definitely not listen.
Or
people
if you
don't listen
Kim
for
Kardashian
worse reasons than
Instagram.
that. Yeah. So I do want to talk about a couple of things. One that anyone that knows me knows I've not shut up about since I started listening to it was the podcast that Patrick suggested to us, just 60 songs that explain the 90s. I binged through the entirety of the podcast that was available on a 50-hour road trip. I went through every single episode in order. It is a phenomenally well put together podcast. It's a great kind of structure, one that we like so much that Ben and Nick and I have actually talked about doing a similar kind of idea of movies that explain the new way. And I do like the wording in that podcast. It is not like the 60 best songs of the 90s or 60 top songs or whatever. It is 60 songs that explain it. So I think we're going to do our probably 12 films that explain the new way, and maybe some of our contributors that are on here right now, like Mr. Patrick and Mr. Ryan, might possibly want to partake in this as well. But if you haven't heard of the podcast, it's a very simple concept. A song is picked to be spoken about kind of in an essayist format. In our case, it would be a movie. That's about, the first 2/3 of it. And then there's a little interview at the end with someone else that shares an affinity for that song, or in our case, it'll be a movie. I have also, by the way, I just last night, in the middle of the night, got a response from the podcaster himself, Mr. Rob Harvilla. I believe that's how it's pronounced.
Yeah, respect.
But he wrote me back and thanked me for the kind words I said about his podcast, and I'm hoping that this will lead to potentially getting him on our podcast to pick his brain a little bit, because I have a feeling, based on his increasing inclusion of things like Weird Al and certain movies, that he would fit in real well with this group. So that's just a hunch I've got. But hopefully we see that happening. But I also, I think...
How do you feel about dick and fart jokes?
I think he's a well, he talks a lot about thinking
Does he have a pulse?
I will say, actually, he does make a point that people that don't laugh at the farting scene in Blazing Saddles are dead inside in one of his episodes. So yes,
that's literally the opening to the entire episode. It's like, he's like, let me just spiritually connect with you right now. Tell me if you think this scene is funny or not. And then he plays
It's his delivery that does it.
Yes.
Just deadpan.
And so it was funny. Actually, go ahead.
No, I was going to say it is it is really interesting how it sort of cross pollinates with stuff that I'm already interested in. For example, there is a author named Dan Dan Ozzie, who is featured on the 60 Songs That Explain the 90s podcast, but I had first heard him on the Vagrant 25 Years on the Streets podcast and had asked for his book for Christmas, which I have now finished reading. And ironically, in the book, guess what certain rock critic is mentioned multiple times? Rob Harvilla. It's like the smallest fucking world. I love it.
Did we just become best friends?
Yeah, I have to. It's funny because I've done 3 of these road trips in the last year or so, and each one of them has been sort of highlighted by a different.
Each one of them is to travel to your ex's on campus to retrieve the sex tape, right?
Yeah, exactly. To Austin,
Right,
Massachusetts, the University of Austin, Massachusetts. But I have what's funny is each one of these trips has been a different podcast. The first one was Smart List, which is a great podcast. Second was How Did This Get Made? And this one was the 60 Songs That Explain the 90s. So we'll see what my next road trip podcast obsession becomes. But
I may not have laughed harder in my life than the episode of How Did This Get Made about Face Off.
It is a phenomenal podcast.
He starts it by saying, a young child in the park gets shot in the face by a sniper. and this movie just gets weirder.
Fantastic stuff. So yeah, highly recommend that podcast, and stay tuned for our kind of aping of that format. We'll see what you all think of it.
I've already written mine, and I have already secured our guest, so hopefully that'll be soon.
The guest is locked up in Ben's house and will not be fed until they record.
In the closet.
It's not one of us, which is you'll get to hear other people. And what's nice is it's actually going to be each of us kind of solo, other than our little interview at the end. So there'll be no interruption podcast for just a few episodes this year.
I'll believe that when I see it.
We'll see about that. Dem's fighting words. I do want to get that drop from Encanto. Sorry, my Vita, please go on and get that drop and press it every time somebody cuts somebody off.
Well, speaking of Encanto, since we've brought it up a couple of times here, I did want to talk about.
Oh, thank God!
I think several of us over the break were able to catch up on some movies. I did want to talk about them, and I also was kind of thinking about something, because I know two of these movies. Actually, I mean, I could say three out of four of these movies for sure are what I would consider to be very weirdly polarizing movies. Like, I don't think that there's anything that is crazy objectionable either way, but it seems like people either are really into these movies or they really, really dislike these movies. Encanto is one of those that I just don't see a lot of in between. People are either on board with it, or they just want to make fun of Lin-Manuel Miranda's scoring ability. And yes, it sounds like a Lin-Manuel Miranda joint. That's okay. And I believe
I called it a song movie.
A song movie? Yeah. I literally just watched it a couple hours before the podcast. But yeah, I thought it was great. I mean, I thought it was an interesting story. I thought it was kind of a fresh take on it's an easy story about someone. What is the outsider who is different and doesn't feel like they belong, and how they belong.
An easy, lighthearted romp about generational trauma instilled in your children because of atrocities you experienced in your past.
It's like The Lion King.
Easy. See, I think
verbatim what my niece said. Verbatim.
Well, she has an ear and a nose for cinema.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is. I mean, it is very interesting as far as what that structure of this movie is, because it starts with people being driven out of a village, and it starts with this kind of traumatic moment. But I mean, a lot of Disney has starts with traumatic moments, but I felt that this did feel like it fit in with the culture that the movie was kind of.
I was thinking
was he just doing the?
He was just killing Bambi.
I thought he was killing Bambi's mother, not.
I'm
Bambi.
a Texas man hick.
You are, but yeah, I thought it was a really. I like that we're getting these more diversity in these movies. They are bringing in things that feel authentic to the culture, that are different than kind of yes, I think this is a story that does exist in other ways and in other media. But I feel that it feels very fresh to me because it has a little bit of a different take on it. And I think, Nick, you hit that on the head as far as there's some serious undertones to this that are kind of glossed by this stuff.
Think about it. This is the first Disney movie in a long time that had not just one strong father figure on screen, but two. Take on account, in addition to that, who is the villain? The matriarch of the family. When you really get down to it. Now she's redeemed, and
some of us haven't seen it, Nick.
Yeah, she comes up pretty hard immediately.
But you know what though? Honestly, that doesn't give away the half of it.
Agreed.
When you take
I
the
literally
whole
said
thing,
when we started, it was 5 minutes into the movie, I was like, "Oh, she's the bad guy."
But you know, it's not like that traditional, almost now marketing campaign. Like, we were all thinking about who's going to be the real villain in No Way Home, and is Dr. Octopus going to end up being good? You know, those were swirling all around in the build-up to this movie. It's not like that. It's not like the curtain is revealed and then it's not that black and white, and that's kind of the point of the story. And I heard a bunch of reviews leading up to it, and I was at a place where I probably wasn't going to watch it. because I was hearing that it was, not Lynn's best work. It's like the music wasn't as good as they're used to from him, and that the story suffered because it didn't have a real villain. And
which is a stupid statement. Sorry, that's just a stupid statement.
100%. And actually, that was the one part that piqued my interest. I go, can you tell a story? What is the story going to be if there isn't a Scar or a Jafar or something else that rhymes with car? But like, what I thought was so great about this movie is I completely disagree with the musical portion. Not only do I think lyrically he's on top of his game as a songwriter, but I've been humming the songs. They have gone viral on TikTok. They are resonating in a really undeniable way. I think that this movie is a slam dunk best animated. It's not even a question. And it's a slam dunk best song.
It did lose the Golden Globe to Billie Eilish's Bond song.
I didn't even know that. That's ridiculous. I mean, honestly, that's totally dumb. But when you think about, to me, and to get off topic quickly, that's like just a classic Billie Eilish James Bond song. A perfect marriage is exactly what you want in a Bond song, but it is cookie cutter. This song has spoken verse, literal, if you listen carefully, musical foreshadowing, and that's all I'll leave it to. Lyrically, everything tells something about the character. And Ben, you had a text thread with us this week about movies that had really good exposition without coming out and telling you. I have gone down the deep dive of the TikTok sphere on Encanto, and the symbolism and double entendres, and it's honestly a rabbit hole that if you're a music geek or a musical theater nerd, I definitely recommend it. It's really, really neat. I'm getting private messages from the scene.
Yeah, Patrick is passive aggressively chatting the group. It giantly pops up on all of our screens. It's just like
I'm getting the applause sign, like the music starts. I just want to thank.
Thanks, Nick. Thanks so much, Nick. That's great. No, it's an awesome flick. I think whether you have kids or not, check it out. If you have not, it's a definitely good watch. What I think is really interesting is why I kind of wanted to pair it with this other movie is I had the same thing where all these reviews were coming out early on that were just like, this movie is shit, and it's like the movie's terrible, the songs are terrible, and then it's just a bunch of people.
One of my favorite animated films I've seen in a long time. If you couldn't.
Yeah, and a lot of people just basically making fun of like Lin-Manuel Miranda's voice, which I'm like, he doesn't even sing in this. Well, he purposely took himself out of the equation, and you still put him back in. But
we watched In the Heights the other day, and we had to turn it off halfway through. I actually didn't like. I thought it was very clear. Like, we'd just seen Encanto, then we went and saw In the Heights, and it was a clear progression of him improving his craft, like clearly. So I know that on the last podcast I came on, it was like, oh, it's a B-. It's a Lin-Manuel movie. I've watched it again. I've listened to the soundtrack multiple times, and it's a great movie. I just don't have those hook melodies stuck in my head like I thought I would.
I do. Bruno, I mean, we don't talk about Bruno is definitely in my head.
The story and the messaging is phenomenal. Like, we walked out of that.
Drip, don't let it go.
Come on. It was funny is I like that song. I don't like her voice. Which was actually the character that was supposed to be Stephanie Beatriz of Brooklyn Nine-Nine fame, because they thought that she, like everyone else, that she sounded like Rosa, and that's who they brought her in for. And then she started talking like, oh no, you fit much better with the lead of the movie, which is kind of interesting. But there's another movie that it's very similarly, I felt, had a lot of kind of negative, like really, really negative things against it that I enjoyed, which was Don't Look Up.
Ghostbusters.
No, everyone loved Ghostbusters, right? Everyone? Nick, you want to go first? Yeah. So yeah, Don't Look Up is another one that I guess part of it, I'm trying to figure out kind of why people are sort of railing against these movies, and if it's just that there's some preconceived notion of not understanding what you're getting into. But like, Don't Look Up, to me, from the trailer, it's very clear what kind of movie this is going to be, and if you've watched anything else that Adam McKay has done, it's very clear what kind of movie this is going to be. And people seem to just be, I don't know, like surprised.
I feel like the people that don't like it didn't realize they were getting into 2021 idiocracy.
Yeah, and thank you. And that's exactly where I was going. It is
uncomfortable.
It is
100% of the
idiocracy.
time.
It is a little harder edged idiocracy, but it is broad. And I think that's the one thing.
But imagine watching Idiocracy as it's unfolding around you in real time. I think that's maybe why that was ahead of its time.
Is that what the Gal Gadot video was?
that is Idiocracy.
A Beatles song?
Imagine.
I think it is very interesting that it is a little bit broader, I think, maybe than I might have thought it would. Like it is very broad in terms of like, we're going to hit you over the head with all of these things, much like Idiocracy was. I just think, Nick, you guys might be right that it is too close, that we're watching something that just happened basically and is continuing to happen.
It's the theatrical embodiment of too soon.
Yeah, like it's really weird.
It's a harsh look at the mirror. Look right in the mirror, and you got to watch for 140 minutes.
Like I understand
was it made during the pandemic? Like was it like when was it?
Yeah. Oh yeah, it was. I do think it is kind of interesting of a lot of these movies, of watching them, of like kind of seeing how people have gotten around filming during a pandemic. Like you really can see how locations are trimmed and scenes where people are probably not in the same room, or in the case of the movie we're going to discuss for the second half of this podcast, literally reusing footage from 20 years ago for animation's sake, which is kind of amazing. But I think maybe people felt that it was too broad or too
mean.
Yeah, I guess.
Preachy, smug is what I heard.
Preachy, yeah. I think that is there, but I think it's also the people like. To me, those criticisms wouldn't make me hate it. It is not my favorite Adam McKay movie. I think there are better Adam McKay movies, but I don't feel it is. Yeah, I don't feel it is in any way an embarrassment of a movie, which is what they really made it sound like. Oh, look at all these Oscar winners that got, like, they made it sound like movie 43, which I do also kind of like that movie. Don't Google anything involving those numbers, Patrick. Just
Rule 34.
Yeah, do not Google Rule 34.
Cool. 43. Rule 43.
So the other one I do want to kind of get your opinions on.
43 is even worse, Patrick. Do not Google Rule 43. From
Patrick and Ben. Another movie came out, in the similar vein of Ghostbusters, a reimagining, but there was a new Matrix movie that came out on streaming and in theaters, and I kind of wanted to hear. I know, Patrick, especially, you seem to be very you went down the rabbit hole with this movie.
I did. I loved it. It has big pacing problems, but it's my second favorite Matrix movie for sure.
It's definitely got all sorts of just issues. I mean, and problems, just filmmaking problems. I mean, it's lots of leaps of logic and kind of techno babble nonsense. And I agree. I really liked it because I thought that it was self-aware enough that and ironically, somebody else said something too, that the first half works because it's so self-aware, and the second half works because it turns into more of a love story than any of the other Matrixes were, where it was just like, oh, obviously, like Neo and Trinity get together because he's the guy and she's the girl, but you don't really feel anything.
Yeah, Reloaded, it just immediate. They're together.
And this movie, in this movie, they basically are just like, oh no, actually, we're going to tell the love story this time, and like actually, how that is more set up with stakes. So, I think it's an interesting movie. I won't call it a good movie, but I liked it quite a bit. And somebody else
10 on an Armageddon scale. Armageddon scale.
Well, so it
reminds me Armageddon scale.
So the movie I can best liken it to is, again, a movie I can reconcile that is a bad movie, but I really enjoy it, which is Richard Kelly's Southland Tales. It's that type of thing. It's like a beautiful disaster, but it still has enough.
The Madonna song?
Yeah, the Madonna song. But it has enough song. It has enough of the good stuff. the good filmmaking side of stuff too, because and I like, do love I didn't go down a rabbit hole or anything, but I was reading some stuff just about how like, oh well, Lana Wachowski's really never made a good movie since The Matrix. Okay, fuck you. Speed Racer first
Speed
off
Racer's
is
great
fucking
fucking-
awesome.
I haven't seen Speed Racer.
Oh man,
Speed
that's a
you
fun
haven't seen
fucking movie.
Speed Racer,
I haven't seen
such
it
a
either.
good
Let's
movie.
do it.
No.
Let's go.
I mean, I'll see Speed Racer.
Speed Racer is amazing.
Sure.
But it was one of those movies that got like lambasted. It came out. I'm like, Speed Racer is a perfectly constructed movie. Like that is a perfectly constructed movie. Cloud
Here
Atlas.
he comes. Here comes Speed Racer. He was steaming on wheels.
I like Cloud Atlas too.
I like Cloud Atlas a lot too, but I would say Cloud Atlas is a lot more similar to The Matrix Resurrections in that it is meandering. It does have some strange kind of tonal shifts and
That's
pacing
our
issues.
podcast.
So I want to talk about the first half and like how I experienced
Sure.
that. I
On
thought
mushrooms.
not quite. The okay, good idea, Nick. Let's go.
Next time.
All right. So the first half had me like constantly excited about whatever Lana was doing. Like, where was she going with this? And that was really exciting. I was like, what does that mean? What does that mean? Where are we? What is my base reality? What is it? And there was a while there that I was like, I really hope that she's retconning everything. Like, I really was excited about that. I thought she was going
It's in
to
fashion.
Well, there was a moment in the movie where I thought there was a way to branch that you could leave the movie theater feeling similar to how you did the first time you left the original Matrix, where you're looking around, you're like, is this right? Are things correct? Am I seeing what I'm supposed to see? And
that is my favorite thing about that first Matrix. And we talked about this in our text thread. Like, I'm not super interested. I haven't seen any of the sequels. It's not that I didn't like the first one. I really did. And it's because of that exact feeling. It's like a visceral.
And there were times in this movie where I was like, oh, this is an origin story of the Matrix. Oh no, this is a story about the developer of the Matrix. But then, I started to branch. My mind was racing. Like, it was really going down the rabbit hole.
Speed racing.
Like, are we doing a horizontal storytelling, or are we doing a vertical storytelling, which is how is like, is this a simulation in a simulation in a simulation? Are the flashbacks actually artifacts of the like a flashback in time of a history of a simulation? And it was good, and so the developer, being a little bit lazy, just added that as part of his next level of simulation. And then that the path of the one goes vertically, like goes through simulation over simulation over simulation, and
which is sort of the plot of Reloaded with the architect.
In a way, that's kind of like they named it properly in the Rebooted, in that like they're actually rebooting a simulation with a new version. What I saw here was like Neo or Thomas Anderson waking up, coding what was the old Matrix, and I was just like, oh shit! Like, I think we're in a simulation in a simulation in a simulation, and I got really excited about that, to the point where, if done right, I could have left the theater and been like, shit, like nothing's real again.
I don't know how to ask you.
Kind of reminds me of that Jack Handy quote where he's like, if you ever go to a play and realize it's a play within a play, hold on to your butts, or whatever it is. It's something similar.
Don't look up synergy right there.
I think
you're the product.
And by the way, Neo Thomas Anderson had this picture of like Keanu Reeves stone baking a licorice pizza or something.
Yeah, she had so many statements to make, and I liked a lot of the symbolism. There's probably like half an hour you can cut out, but in each of those like scenes, I think you can cut out, there's like one line that I'm like, oh, I love that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little over expository, kind of by necessity, I feel like, because they just wanted to tie everything up. Like,
it's a little dense.
We have an explanation.
It's a little dense.
We have an explanation for that. We have an explanation.
A little dense.
Yeah.
I did like in the theater room when digital Morpheus is like, okay, are you comfortable now? You're in the right, like, you're in the right setting now. What's your headspace? Like, so set and setting. I loved that part. Like, before he took the pill.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of like I said, for me, the movie, it reminded me most of a Scream, because it is just a very much a dissertation on the idea of rebooting a franchise that's popular, and how do you improve upon that? How do you learn from mistakes or criticisms of what it was and what's at the heart of it? And I think I agree with both.
And Scream is doing that again this Friday, right?
And I think you guys hit
it's apparently good.
Really hit in the head. Also, of like the love story is much more satisfying in this than anything else. But yeah, I thought I agree with it. It's certainly an interesting plot for a movie. I mean, just following along of like the general storyline is very interesting to me.
Well, Matt and I were talking about it at a beer festival this past weekend, and Matt made a suggestion that I think definitely would have improved the film, which is that you basically, instead of not having Morpheus in it, which was kind of strange, actually have Lawrence Fishburne playing the Morpheus character, but have him be the disillusioned Jada Pinkett Smith character instead, where now he's lived that kind of whole life and he's seen the machines kind of start to benefit or whatever, and so he's the one who's now just like, I don't want to deal with this shit anymore. And I think that's an interesting,
because I think there's also there's also this Eternal Sunshine feeling to it as well, that Neo and Trinity will always find each other. This idea that no matter how many times you are going through this whole thing,
mean Hancock?
They are destined to be the reason. And I think absolutely actual Morpheus should have been involved in that, as those three are the heart of that original movie. And I think, and Ben and I were talking about it, I think it's because that Fishburne just didn't have a good working experience on the original movies, and maybe badmouthed them a little bit, which is a shame, because I think that really would have also helped bridge that center section, which felt interesting. But I'm like, okay, like Jada, how many people were like really chomping at the bit to revisit her character? I barely remember her name from those movies. Nairobi, that sounds wrong. That sounds like Naomi. I can't say that, but yeah,
I played the video games.
Yeah, I think it is another one of those movies that's worth the watch. It didn't feel overly long to me, to be honest, but I did watch it in 2 sittings, so that might be. I kind of stopped.
I also watched it I've seen it twice now, but the first time I watched it in 2 sittings because I started it kind of late.
Yeah,
you Magnolia'd it.
Yes. Yeah,
I keep coming back to Paul Thomas Anderson.
It's certainly not Magnolia long. Well, and I'm curious. I have not seen Licorice Pizza, but that's another one that's getting some very polarizing responses.
Yeah. I want to see it, but the more I read about it, the more it just feels kind of creepy. Right?
There's a problematic bent to it. But let's hold off that one till once we've seen it and we can kind of talk about it. But I'm curious.
End the debate. Would you rather have pineapple or licorice on a pizza if you had to choose?
That a debate?
That's not a debate. That's pineapple. Well, I mean, I love licorice, but that's gross on a pizza.
I mean, it was a joke. Yeah, it's the polarizing topping on that's going. You ever have a time where you're on a podcast and every joke you think you're about to say is going to be great, and every single time it doesn't go over well?
It was all right.
Yeah, that's my nightmare. That's my nightmare.
So let's get to our kind of main event here, and I do want to
wait. Hold on, Ryan. Is there anything you want to talk about? Ryan's just been pensively sitting over there, just like chilling out. The whole time we're sitting here nerding out.
He's waiting for the Matrix to be over.
He is going to sing "We Don't Talk About Bruno" in its entirety. Go ahead when you're ready, Ryan.
I haven't seen that movie.
Great job. If you guys didn't hear it, we might have cut out.
I do actually want to talk about this. It's not a movie; it's a TV show that's started back up. Righteous Gemstones started back up on HBO, and if you aren't watching that, you should.
How was the premiere?
Well, so I didn't realize, I don't know, maybe I wasn't paying attention. Started 2 weeks ago, or there's 2 episodes out in the second series.
I think they aired them both in the same night. It just started this week.
So I watched them both last night, and I will tell you, Judy Gemstone is carrying the water right now.
She is a revelation. I agree.
Crushing it.
She did in season 1 though too, or season. This is second season, right? Or is it third season? Yeah.
Yeah.
So
it's
like she got like progressively better in season 1.
Right. That's I agree.
Out of the gates, season 2, she is on fire.
That is awesome.
Like the scene, the scene where she's trying to figure out if her father is sleeping with his friend from high school, talking about secretions being all over the room, don't touch anything, had me crying.
Yeah, she is. I remember I got really excited that she showed up briefly in Knives Out, because I didn't really know her from much other than a little bit in Vice Principals. But yeah, she is easily MVP of that show, which is saying a lot considering there are some really heavy hitting character actors in that entire show.
Yeah.
Definitely. I mean, when you're in a show with John Goodman and Danny McBride, they're going to cast a pretty long shadow there that you got to kind of step out of.
Walter Scoggins, and I mean, you got
Goggins.
Walt Scoggins. I always call him Scoggins because it's more fun that way. All right,
Walter's Goggins.
It's like this podcast. There are some loud voices to step out from, and it's really impressive that she does it.
That's awesome. I am excited to get into that.
Ryan's just calling himself the MVP of the New Way right now.
He is the breakout star of this episode of the New Way. Just wait till we wind him up.
Yeah,
Step out of my long shadow, Ryan. I dare you. Step out of that long shadow.
That's good. The audience liked that one.
He'll burn.
They liked that one. So yeah, we didn't get a chance really to dig into it too much before the break, just because it had only been out for a couple of days. But we did want to give you our long-awaited opinion on the final.
Can we talk about something else?
About the at least end of the first trilogy of the new Spider-Man in the MCU, which is Spider-Man No Way Home. It is. And it's funny, I'm trying to think, I have not seen a lot, but I also have not kind of gone digging much. I'm not seeing any dislike for this movie. And I've seen that with any Marvel movie, there is at least a 30% of the audience is going to be griping about this thing or that thing, or they didn't like the way that Endgame finished, or Infinity War, or even Thor Ragnarok, which is kind of like a fan favorite movie. It was too funny or whatever. Maybe I'm not in the right circles for it. I don't see anybody bitching about this movie.
I honestly feel like it's kind of funny that, like, don't you think that professional published reviewers be chomping at the bit to like say, okay, I have superhero fatigue, and find things that were wrong with it. It was the best reviewed film of 2021. Rotten Tomatoes, and the best reviewed show was WandaVision, by the way.
Yeah,
but like, I honestly think that a contrarian like that could get clicks, honestly. And if you're thinking just coldly, strategically, but everyone loved it. Everyone walked out, and I think that COVID people needed it. They needed that to happen to a certain extent, and I am not naive enough to think that didn't play into it. But it's just well made.
Yeah, I feel like with that one, it would have been too obvious of a clickbait article.
It's not good.
I don't think it's technically the best reviewed movie of the year on Rotten Tomatoes. No, Coda had almost a perfect rating.
Fight.
Uh-oh. Oh boy.
I mean, they just posted something on their Instagram.
Oh, well.
We'll see.
You better believe everything that's on.
Yeah, exactly.
We've got
but we're arguing.
How we got here.
We're arguing about what was the best reviewed Rotten Tomatoes movie, and I'm saying Rotten Tomatoes posted it on their Instagram.
Rotten Tomatoes is wrong.
Don't look up.
You go check that out.
I'm looking it up.
Spider-Man No Way Home, 93%.
Yeah, so it's definitely not. There are a bunch of other movies.
Winner of the Golden Tomato Awards. Best reviewed movie 2021 on the Rotten Tomatoes account.
Golden Tomato. That's
I'm
fake
looking
news.
at the site right now because The Lost Daughter, The Power of the Dog, and Encanto is also 91%. I'm just saying. I don't know what metric they're working on.
But did they win the Golden Tomato, Ben? Did they win the Golden Tomato?
Well, I don't even know what the Golden Tomatoes are.
God damn it, Ben.
Tomato.
It's your job to know what the Golden
It's what the Golden Globes turned into because they couldn't afford to do an actual cast. They're now just the Golden Tomatoes.
It's about the same.
Yeah, or the
It's a
Golden
lateral
Globuses.
It's a lateral award.
We drove Patrick to drink real beer instead of his Corona. He couldn't handle the
Pliny,
debate.
holy shit.
Nothing's
Here we go.
nothing stronger than family. Is that maybe a Pliny?
Yeah,
Drop in for some rocket fuel.
So let's break down, and it is interesting with Spider-Man. I think you're right, Nick, as far as the kind of this happening at the end of COVID and bringing kind of people back together. Maybe not at the greatest time to be bringing people back together.
The worst possible time.
But
I sat solo in the movie theater with 2 seats on either side.
Nice.
It was great.
In Matrix Resurrections actually kind of hits on this as well, of kind of talking about nostalgia as a drug. And that is, I think, a big part of Spider-Man, is that no matter at some point over this franchise's history, and again, this is where we're going to get into the spoiler alerts if you don't want to be spoiled, but the idea that we are getting to visit 3 different eras of Spider-Man filmmaking, reaching all the way back to the early 2000s, and you can't, I think that's also like to remember what was going on with superhero movies at that time. We had X-Men and then we had Spider-Man. Spider-Man was like the biggest thing that had happened to superhero movies since Batman 89. Like X-Men was good, and I think a lot of people don't give enough credit for bridging that path. But
it set the table.
But Spider-Man was an event. Like I remember seeing that in Indianapolis. It was my cousin's graduation weekend, and our whole my dad and my grandmother and my aunts, like we all went to go see Spider-Man in the theater. It was huge. So the idea of having Tobey Maguire come back for this, who hasn't acted in 6 years, 7 years, he's been retired or taking a break, to have him show up. And then of course the idea that you had Andrew Garfield, who was a great Spider-Man and Peter Parker in 2 very mediocre movies, finally get his due. I think that's a huge part of that. There's just such a satisfying closure as a fan watching this. And then also, not to sell it short, and I feel that this doesn't get talked about kind of enough in this, because you have these huge, like we talked about with Gemstones, you have these big moments and these big things, but at the heart of it, you have Ned and MJ and Peter as these 3 friends that are the emotional through line of this movie that are, especially because I've watched this now a second time, a couple of times really, of like how much is happening emotionally for these characters. And the thing I think I liked the most about it, because I know Nick knows that the part of Spider-Man I hate the most is the, like, I have to choose between going to prom and like fighting Doc Ock. And it's just like,
so
this,
like the whole, so Spider-Man, like what he represents at his core.
But see, the difference is that
that's the best part. That's what distinguishes.
But see,
I know, Patrick.
For,
I've had this talk before.
For me, this did the same thing with real stakes.
I will say, I think coming out of this movie, I mean, the movie, he started as a kid and you just watch him become an adult. Like, he moved into his own apartment. I think you're going to get more, like what you want out of Spider-Man after this.
I also think they did a great job of taking that through line that you hate of, oh, do I get to go on this field trip to Washington, D.C., or do I have to fight the evil guy, or do I have, missing all of these monumental moments in his childhood. And then at the end of this movie, he sees his 2 friends that are so used to him not being there for these monumental moments, and he's there for those monumental moments, and they don't know who he is. So it's kind of that like culmination of that entire series of events where he's picking somebody else over them.
You reap what you sow.
He's finally there.
There's weight. Yeah.
They don't know who he is.
Like, that's what I mean by
puts
stakes.
Weight behind that through line that you don't like.
Yes.
That through line of tropes. It gives that weight at the end of the day.
Yeah, in a huge and satisfying way that feels earned through like watching these like these 2 people help him through this whole journey in this movie. They're the ones that literally open the portals for these Deus Ex Machinas to come in and help him with everything at the end. Like, it's it's very satisfying, and I love that there is it's not even a course correction. And I'm very curious, because I read a little bit about kind of the making of this and where they were going with it. It's so strange that this franchise, the way these 3 movies played out, comes together feeling so complete. and as a through line story to basically be his origin, when that was not really the plan for this movie. Like, this movie was not supposed to be this thing, and maybe, I mean,
it was going to be Craven.
Yeah, there was
Craven's
Craven.
Last Hunt,
I think they did have the idea of the forgetting, kind of that idea that maybe it would reset him somewhat at the end of it, which I know a lot of people, that was their biggest complaint with the MCU version of Spider-Man, is that he had Tony Stark and he wasn't dealing with having no money, and he had the fancy suits, and it was like
this Spider-Man universe is bad shit compared to the other Spider-Man universes, and I love that they like reference that. They're like, you have wizards?
It's a
What
space?
the hell? What is going on?
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think that the thing that it may seem super obvious to everybody, but the real what I think was the real table setter for this movie was Spider-Verse, which is that movie came out, and I think was the reaction to Into the Spider-Verse, I think was far more positive than people anticipated. I think it was far more positive than Sony anticipated. And so I think when that
it's
came
the one
out,
instance of Sony getting it right before Marvel.
Yeah, it's the one time, right? Exactly. And so I'm wondering how much when that movie came out, that got both, the representation at Sony and Kevin Feige going, well, in that case, what other options do we have here? Because I do think it's just
better give the fans what they want, and they did.
Yeah, exactly. And to do it tastefully, and to do it in a way where it actually makes sense, for the story. So I do think that was the thing, because the whole time I'm sitting there watching it, I'm just like, oh, they made like a live action Into the Spider-Verse. This is great. Like, when is
I wanted Miles to show up. I wanted him to so bad.
Well, the thing is, they did Spider-Verse, but they didn't really. I mean, Into the Spider-Verse really gets into the, one of them is a literal pig. It's a cartoon. It's taking the concept. It's not telling the story of Spider-Verse, but it used that motif.
The motif, the mechanism.
Now it's mainstream, right? They made it work with Into the Spider-Verse, so we're just going to throw in and give an opportunity to feel this this nostalgia that, and you guys know, I used to rail on Spider-Man 2 by Raimi, and I used to think Amazing 2 was better than First Amazing, and I've gone back on both of those opinions because I rewatched those films, and I was thinking, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to figure out, like, definitively, I'm going to rank my Spider-Man movies, and that might have actually been spurred on by the text you sent, Matt. But I realized, like, my opinions change over time, but when I saw No Way Home, what I realized was, even the worst of the worst, I had this huge love and nostalgia and investment in that I didn't even really know I had until I saw it put together competently and like compassionately.
So Nick, that is actually leads me exactly into what I was gonna say about how they did that. We all gave you hell because you talked about how Ghostbusters was pedantic in bringing back the things that we loved from the previous versions and things like that. And, we gave you tons of shit for it. And then you walk into the theater and watch Spider-Man No Way Home do it. And they do it so perfectly where they bring back all of these aspects and they do it absolutely, like, you could not have done it any better. I thought that was particularly funny in the way they did that, given the conversation we had, a month ago.
Yeah, it's just a deft hand. It's like, I really do feel like Spider-Verse was a success because Sony underestimated it and they put all their eggs in the live action basket, let their creatives do the heavy lifting, and of course, look what happened. It was full of people who loved the character and made the character of Spider-Man shine. The reason why Into the Spider-Verse is a huge success, and the reason why Far From No Way Home is a huge success, they're both about the Spider-Verse, but it's more about the character and how the character is beloved, and we're going to show you why. Because there's not just one version of the character. And
people,
that is, like, really, Flashpoint does it a little bit in DC, but Marvel really, like, they got, it's like Chick-fil-A didn't invent the chicken sandwich, they just perfected it. And I feel like
all people like when they go to a movie, they want to see themselves in the movie. And I think, Miles does a great job of doing that. Like all races, all ethnicities, all weirdos, like freaking Peter Porker and like the noir person, Nick Cage. Like I think that's why like Black Panther was so popular, is because like all of a sudden like these groups of people get to see themselves in these franchises on screen, and they get to live in those shoes. And then Spider-Verse like just brought them all together, like every single type, women, weirdos, like black people, white people. I think it just did a great job.
Yeah,
there's another viral video that went viral recently of this guy on TikTok responding to people's criticism of that shot in Endgame, where all the female superheroes are all together in one group and all emerge at the same time. And is it corny? Yeah. But this guy basically, his retort is a video of his daughter who is standing and just waiting for that scene. And the moment the scene happens, she just erupts. And it cuts back to him. It's like, that's why that's a good scene.
People
it wasn't for you.
Yeah.
Meanwhile,
that was not made for you.
The same people who were railing against that thing are the same people who jumped out of their seats in major applause when you had the one scene where all three of the Spider-Man swinging at the same time in the same frame.
Exactly.
It's like, we got Toby, Andrew, and we got Tom Holland all in one frame.
By the way,
can we just go ahead, Nick?
No, I think that it's another fun rabbit hole to go down to see the audience reaction videos, and it was great with Endgame and Infinity War.
To the national championship game. Yeah, I've been watching those.
I mean, all reaction videos are good. 2 girls, 1 cup. All the reaction videos are golden. But but right now, seeing the scenes when Toby and Andy come back, I mean, it's priceless. Seeing people united in this nerdy glee. It's really truly an emotion we have not really. I wouldn't say we haven't gotten a chance to feel it, but the fact that a lot of us saw in a theater with other people.
How rowdy were y'all's theaters?
Oh,
mine was not very rowdy.
Our theater is fucking rowdy. I miss lines.
Yeah, I miss. I had to when I rewatched the bootleg I found. We
all know that's what you meant when you said we saw.
I was
2 or 3
finally
times,
able to hear. Like I guarantee Ben and I missed probably 20% of the dialogue. Is like because there were so many moments that were these like fan favorite cheering excited beats and they were happening so frequently that it was just like, fuck, I can't hear any of the dialogue that happens immediately after that, or for like sometimes like a minute after that.
Well, the irony is in our theater, Matt, when we first saw it on opening night, there was a guy sitting like 2 rows. He was off to our right and 2 rows ahead of us, but it sounded like, I mean, for him, it sounded like it was, he was about to just fucking, blast jizz all over the thing because he was going.
And that's the new way.
When they were first opening up the when they were opening up the portals, he just goes, "Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah," and I'm like sitting there cracking up because I at this point it's been well established. I know what's coming. I'm like, okay, who are
that guy in front of you is
that guy is coming. Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. Like when Nick gets really excited and he goes, like it was.
I will say,
yeah, there you go.
I will say,
I'm gonna thwip.
Ben Wilson did have one of those moments in Infinity War when Thor arrived in Wakanda. Ben Wilson got as close to erect as I've been next to him, and it was just like,
it was amazing.
Yeah, it was the Colossus in the X-Men video game.
You love bringing that up, but like. That is a seminal movie watching memory I'll have for the rest of my life. Like all of a sudden, like what the fuck?
Like everyone was excited, but Ben specifically for that moment was just like
he freaked out.
The reason why is because I've always loved Thor, and I always wanted to be like, okay, if Thor just unleashes and just goes fucking ape shit, and I knew it was coming. Like it's like as soon as he shows up,
he should have gone for the head. Should have gone for the head.
So speaking of coming,
my only note
when they were standing there on the Statue of Liberty and discussing Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man, and he's like, "Wait, so the webs just come out of your hands? Like,
Got spider blood?
Where
so
else
gross.
does it come out of?"
So good. And the fact is, like,
hold on, Nick. I took my 14-year-old nephew to watch this movie. I don't know if he got that reference. I assume he did, but
He got it.
I'm literally like in the fetal position, leaning away from him, almost in tears, laughing at that scene.
Man, when Toby looked at Andrew and just was like, "You're amazing." So good.
Can we talk about what a national treasure Andrew Garfield is?
100%, yes.
He's an international treasure.
Yeah, he's not
Yes, I
our
know.
treasure.
He's not
I
from
know.
here.
But
We own him now.
I think they said it was ad-libbed when they were.
Neither is
standing there.
Daredevil.
I think they said it was ad-libbed when they were all standing there, and he just goes, "I
Love
love
you."
you guys."
Yep.
Like that was just straight ad-lib. So that sent me. A friend told me about that, and it kind of sent me down the Andrew Garfield, rabbit hole. And like there are videos upon videos upon videos of him just staring like starry-eyed at whoever he's talking to. Like, that man genuinely loves anybody that he's interacting with.
Tick Tick Boom.
I watched Tick Tick Boom
interview-
and damn near cried. Like I had no interest.
I
in
did
watching
cry.
it.
Damn
I
near?
cried.
What's wrong with you?
I
Just
had no
let
I
it
had
go.
no interest in watching it, none whatsoever. My friend Laura kept asking me if I'd seen it, and finally I was like, whatever, I'm just gonna watch it. And I'm sitting on my couch by myself, just like holding back tears because of Andrew Garfield.
The interview with him and man, who plays the guy who gets AIDS in the movie?
Tom Hanks.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah. Well, they're having an interview, and I'm sorry, I don't know his name, but pivotal moment in the movie. You know who I'm talking about. They're talking with the actors, and he's having the actor is having a hard time. Like it's a very dramatic scene, and Andrew like stops the scene, looks at him, and goes, "I'm sorry," and the actor's just like, "What? Like you're doing great." And he goes, "No, I need to get to your level."
Yeah.
Like, and it was the most heartfelt, and that actor like was just like, that blew me away. I was almost in tears because you respected me so hard right then, and Andrew was just so kind about it. He is a treasure.
Yeah, I think
he's a nice guy.
Yeah, 2021
He sold
seems
the
to be
movie.
his
He
year. Between Tick Tick Boom and this movie, which is to have both of those come out. I really hope very much so that he gets the Oscar for Tick Tick Boom this year.
Yeah,
It's the actor's Robin DeJesus.
I was actually funny enough because I just kind of a quick aside. I did say I thought that Tick Tick Boom was my favorite movie of the year. I was like, I really liked Coda 2, but maybe I like Tick Tick Boom a little bit more. But then I forgot I actually do have my third on that list, which is from earlier in the year, which is Green Knight.
Oh yeah.
So
another interesting tidbit about that movie that my friend Laura told me was when Garfield does the scene where he gets in and does the laps and kind of everything comes together in his head for the music and he's lap swimming.
Right.
That's the actual pool that basically the whole story is based on. He would go swim in that pool. That was the actual pool, and they did that accidentally. They didn't know that.
Whoa.
They
That's
found out
amazing.
after the fact that it was the
That's pretty
actual
crazy.
location.
I'm gonna connect Tick Tick Boom back to Spider-Man. In the fact
In one
that, like,
step, Andrew Garfield.
Flip.
in one
6
step.
degrees of Peter Porker.
In one step. So the Boho Days scene in Tick Tick Boom, which was really great. I had just seen Tick Tick Boom. Now go and saw Spider-Man, and then when Peter brings in Zendaya or MJ into the apartment, and it's just a single shot going around the apartment, reminded me exactly of Boho Days. And while sitting in the theater watching this happen, the single shot moving around, kind of chaos, like the helicopters are coming down. That's the moment in the Spider-Man movie where I go, this movie is different than MCU movies. Like this movie, they've put love and care into it. They're actually making a hell of a film. And I got really excited at that scene.
So John Watts, who is the director of this current Spider-Man series, did you hear what him and his wife are tackling as the next property? Since he's probably going to end up doing Fantastic Four, which is what everybody says, but they're producing and writing a new reboot of a certain property. Are you familiar with what this is at all?
I don't know what you're about to say.
Completely not what you'd expect. Final
Mighty
fucking
Ducks.
Destination.
Yeah, I did see that headline.
I wanted it to be Mighty Ducks.
Yeah. So I'm really interested in what him and his wife are going to do with something like that.
Well, I'm glad-
And I heard
that.
I heard we aren't getting Mighty Ducks season 2 because Emilio Estevez won't get vaccinated, but that was a pretty good reboot too, honestly.
Son of a bitch.
Have you watched that show? Have you watched the Mighty Ducks?
Oh yeah,
show?
I watched the show.
Yeah,
You like it, Ben?
Yeah,
Maybe,
I thought it was
okay.
cool.
Keel.
Keel too.
It's pretty cool. Yeah,
I like
I
it.
do love that shot
KEWL.
that Patrick's talking about. It's because it kicks off the movie, but there's great score with the drums and everything going on it, but it's just this like
There's a
chaos
lot of
one
Easter eggs
take
in the
that's great
score.
in it. Yeah.
There's like, for example, at the end when he's talking with MJ and she doesn't know who it is, like there's wedding music hidden in the score. Like
as an-
bum, bum, bum.
Oh,
It's
wow.
just hidden in there.
And as like an Elfman stan, like what my Ben Wilson Thor moment was when Toby Spider-Man finally got reunited with Alfred Molina, and we heard Danny's Doc Ock sting, which was
Exactly.
so
Well, Doc
awesome.
Ock's thing was all over there, but then they had the actual Spider-Man theme, and he's like, "Oh, you're all grown
They
up
did it-
now. You're a man now," which is like such a great little closure bit as well.
And they say that a hero will save us. I'm not going to stand here and wait.
I will say actually from the interplay scene, or if any of the interplay, I guess, with all three of the Spider-Men together, I thought the Spider-Mans. The hardest I laughed at any line was "I've been stabbed before,"
which
from Tobey Maguire.
Wait, and you know what? So I think something we were kind of tiptoeing around here a little bit, but this movie very much falls into both meticulous planning and happy accident, like all over the place, because there's all kinds of shit.
Or
like,
Toby saying, "Hey, I haven't acted in 6 years, but this is a pretty sweet gig. I kind of forgot how great this was."
Yeah, and like,
hey, do me a favor and don't talk a whole lot about what my Spider-Man has been up to since the events of Spider-Man
and he's
3.
supposedly a notorious prick, and it sounds like everyone had like he and Andrew Garfield went incognito and went and saw the movie on opening night, like in a movie theater wearing the MCU disguise of ball cap and sunglasses, and apparently like that didn't tip anyone off. But like the Tobey Maguire I've been sad before, he was supposed to die, spoiler alert, at the end of that movie,
which would have made a lot of sense, and I was emotionally gearing towards that, and actually was thinking, "Oh, that's a great decision," and then.
I'm the exact opposite. That I think that completely would overshadow what's going to happen. The arc in that end of that movie needs to be about Tom's Spider-Man, and this Peter Parker, and the emotional beat of him and Ned, and like having another character die there. I think too much.
You get that. I think, but again, what is also vital to Spider-Man is the loss. He's defined by the dual life and kind of made that popular, but maybe it's not as bad as Daredevil, but they're both in the same
hormonal loss. Like he's raging. like he doesn't like he's at the age where
nowhere to blow off his spider steam.
Well, like he's at the age where like testosterone just like he doesn't know how to handle it. It's like raging through his veins, and he has loss, and he just wants to destroy. And so he's at that choice.
How do you waistband it in a Spider-Man costume?
He's all about loss. So to me, piling on another, to me, that would be another loss. We've already gotten 3 movies of Toby.
With a web.
I feel like that was always treated as kind of a cameo.
Yeah, I don't know.
For me, you're not gonna like overshadow the ending, because the ending is extremely emotional.
I mean, he goes to May's
really
grave right after that.
It.
Yeah, I don't know.
You risk it if you kill Toby.
I felt Toby's death
taken.
coming, but I felt that death was coming as well. But I much like rewatching it and going back through it. I'm like, oh man, I'm actually really glad, because I love that quiet moment between Happy and Peter at May's grave is such a sweet little scene, because again, we also feel Tony, that we get that second loss because he's talking about Tony as well. Like I had a friend that was like her and he passed away and they live on and blah, blah. Like there were all of these things that are tying together that, and he's losing his best friends. I mean, everyone, he's losing everyone in his life, no matter what, at the end of the movie. I like, plus it'll be great if they can trot Toby back out for something. Like I think it's a good happy accident.
That's why it didn't happen.
I love
the
that
writers.
The
writers would have made him die, though. But
he recognizes the sunk cost fallacy, and he's just like, erase the memory, everybody. Sunk cost. I do love that. Like the old Spider-Mans came in, and they're like the adult figures, and helped him transition to adulthood. Whereas, like early on in the movie, the most teenager thing that Peter Parker has ever done in any of the movies takes place.
Like Patrick froze.
Am I here?
You're back.
You're here.
Okay.
You're here.
He does the most teenager thing. Like I've got some nephews that are teenagers, and this was Peter Parker. Happy is supposed to sleep in the living room while like Peter's in sleeping in another room, and Peter just doesn't give a damn, and he's just lounging on the sofa talking to his girlfriend, completely being a teenager, while Happy is passed out uncomfortably on the chair. Like, dude, what the fuck? I hate kids. like that was the most teenager thing. And then by the end of the movie, he's met the adults. He has a lease on an apartment. His life, it was great.
Yeah, I mean, we set up,
and you brought that up before. He really and a lot of people have said this, that like he wasn't quite Spider-Man until the events of this film. And you could argue Uncle Ben's death in the comics and the other iterations are the moment he becomes Spider-Man. But in this case, we didn't hear a lot from Ben. We just had this suitcase. And all the emphasis was on May. And we have a kid who is alluding to with great power comes great responsibility, but it doesn't come out until this movie. And when Matt talks about things that are being earned, they earned the right to bring that back.
Well, and we've gotten an origin story that for the first time in any superhero movie has taken place as an actual journey over several movies. Instead of it being because we've seen Peter Parker's origin story, we've seen Batman's mother's pearls fall on the ground in like 30 different movies, but we've taken something that is well-worn territory here. And now we have spread it across these 3 flicks where he's gone through all of this shit, and now is actually going to comes into his own to start his actual Spider-Manning, which I think is great. Like it's such a cool way to do that, and something that really I don't know that they necessarily had it planned to do that, but it came together so well based on everything else that they were doing in that universe. And I think that's, whether that's happy accident or planning, I think it is both. I think there's a lot of chaos that led to that, but
well, they've been doing this for a long time, and they've made things happen that fans never in a million years thought they would see. The ensemble cast and the intertwining storylines, and I think Marvel was perfectly positioned to make this movie during a pandemic. You had and like you said earlier, Matt, this place takes place in New York City, and it never felt like it wasn't New York. But they wrote it in such a smart way and made it really about the Spider-Mans and like the loss and the maturation of Tom Holland's Spider-Man. So you didn't notice that this was a typical made during the pandemic film. It's just a deft hand, and it's Marvel with a decade plus experience of just like, well, we're going to make this work.
Now I'm curious your thoughts on this as we kind of see how this is leading into our next phase of this juggernaut franchise and just the MCU in general.
Juggernaut, bitch.
But this movie is
what a good time to be a Spider-Man fan.
Yeah.
Like it's never been a better time.
And this movie is like one of the biggest movies that has ever been released, and it was released during it, like hamstrung during a pandemic, and still broke fucking crazy records. Yeah. So obviously the MCU and everyone is giddy with this, and this is, I think originally was just this idea that this was like a little bit of a palette tease for Doctor Strange in the multiverse. And
you know what, Matt? I really wish there had been one line where Toby said, "Oh, Doctor Strange, I know him." Well, earlier he says that he's never heard of the Avengers. They don't have the Avengers. But in one of the Raimi movies, they go, "What are they gonna call?" Oh, it was 2. He goes,
Yeah,
"What are they
there's
gonna
already
call
a
him?
Doctor
Doctor Strange. It's already taken." So it's canon that he would have existed in Raimi's universe. FYI.
Yeah. Well, what's I think going to be interesting is that they've, based on the success of this movie, amongst other things, they were doing other reshoots already, but they're adding all kinds of shit into multiverse now, which could be a good thing, could be a bad thing. I don't feel that they've hit that excess of things yet. I think this just gave them once again a little bit more of a certainty that this is going to work and people will show up for it.
Ben said Into the Spider-Verse succeeds and kind of charts the course for No Way Home. No Way Home really succeeds and charts the course for Multiverse of Madness. This is a really, honestly, like, when you talk about the Scorsese, and this is not, the criticisms, they're not real films, it's not real filmmaking. This is on the razor's edge of adapting and filmmaking and world building. And it's because they aren't doing everything at once. They're learning. They're like the Raptors. They don't attack one side of the same fence,
Did you see? I thought this was sort of funny. I forget if we talked about this or not, but it made me laugh really hard. So we talked on the last podcast about how Wes Anderson has been kind of more vocal about championing superhero movies and their importance in the pantheon. He actually doubled down on that and talked about
Wes Anderson or Paul Thomas Anderson.
I'm sorry, Paul. Paul Thomas Anderson.
Yeah, Paul Thomas. Yeah.
PTA.
I think actually maybe I want to say actually maybe this quote is from Wes Anderson, which would make more sense. So Wes Anderson, I believe, also got on that bandwagon, but then said that his favorite movie was that he watched last year was Venom Let There Be Carnage, which was so far over the course correction. But I also was kind of I kind of love someone just coming on me I liked watching these two guys, these two random things argue, and it was entertaining, and who cares if it's art or not, it's it's entertainment, which I thought was kind of interesting.
He's adapting a new Roald Dahl property next.
Oh yeah.
Wes Anderson. He's doing another Roald Dahl. I still want him to make My Uncle Oswald is my dream pairing, which is a awesome book by Roald Dahl. If you haven't read it, but anyway.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No. I thought that was funny, but I mean,
they know that a healthy film ecosystem includes and heavily features the Marvel universe now into the foreseeable future. It is to use the Venom Carnage analogy, it is very symbiotic. We're at a point where, if superhero films are doing well, it gives everything else a chance to do well.
Yeah, and I mean, this movie has all kinds of teases, from Daredevil showing up in it to Ned being magic. You can throw Ned in a Doctor Strange movie, and also maybe the funniest, retcon of the entire movie has to do with Venom, which I do absolutely love. Is that so this whole idea that everyone been spending all this time and figuring out who were the Sinister Six that were going to show up, and we keep seeing the 5 same villains in the trailer, and we don't know, and then we watch the movie, and it's still just 5 villains, and then we have this.
Even my mother was really cute about this when Matt visited us. She saw it with me, and she goes, "Matt, I know that there's a Sinister Six that fights Spider-Man, and I was counting, and I only had 5, and I was just waiting, and I was like, yeah, you and me both, Ma."
And literally, Marvel's just like, hey, so Sony, we're going to make a really good Spider-Man movie, and we're going to include your little Venom shit in here, but we're also going to erase it from existence in our universe. And so literally they have Venom did get pulled over like all of the other villains, but he was drunk at a bar in Mexico and didn't show up for the fight, and then gets zapped back to his universe when the spell gets cast and leaves the symbiote behind him on the table.
It took me a while. I didn't know who it was because I haven't seen those movies. I was just like,
oh my God.
You're like, why is Bane in this? Oh my God, is this the DC crossover I've been waiting for?
I didn't hate Venom. I thought it was fun. Again, a 10 on the Armageddon scale and a 1 on everything else.
The second one was not the same.
Well, look, the thing is, I was much more critical of Venom than you, Matt.
Oh yeah, I love the first one.
Genuinely enjoyed Venom. I enjoyed it if you could turn your brain off and don't and don't have the vested interest
I are
in
good
the
at that.
character of Spider-Man. Okay, but I didn't even see Let There Be Carnage, but I knew about the end credit scene, and when I heard about it, my stomach, like my heart, absolutely sank. And the basically they end the last horrible Venom movie. Post-credit sequence, Eddie Brock, played by Tom Hardy, aka Venom, is all of a sudden in this disoriented in this hotel room. He doesn't know how he's got there. He doesn't have any memory of getting there. He turns on the TV, and it's J. Jonah Jameson from the MCU in the same broadcast at the end of Far From Home. Mysterio's dead. And they confirmed it. They showed Tom Holland's Spider-Man right there on the TV, and that's where it ended. And when I heard about that, gentlemen, I felt like I had just walked out of the Tallahassee Mall with Ben Wilson, having seen Spider-Man 3, and my stomach was at the floor. And it's like they did it. They made it canon. Now Tom Hardy's Venom is going to be in the same MCU universe as Spider-Man, and I'm just going to have to live with it. It's devastating for someone who didn't like those movies and want them to do that story right with Spider-Man from the beginning. It's a fanboy stupid thing, and I eventually was able to get over it because their track record's so good, and I just had total trust that they would figure it out. And not only did they figure it out, they just said, we're gonna make this a post-credit sequence and get rid of them entirely, so leaving a little drop of symbiote behind so that we can retcon this however we see fit, and we can just leave it on the table and take these next couple of months.
And Sony can
what we
also
want to do.
Well, and Sony can also continue to make. Well, no, Sony can also continue to make time. So those movies made a lot of money. There are people that are fans.
Why they were made
that are fans of those movies, but I think that is
cash grab.
I think that Sony has finally realized that, like, yeah, we can have our cake and eat it too. We can make our own version of Venom. They can make their own version of Venom.
We can completely
Everyone can have a Venom.
Our property. we can set fire to the franchise, and Marvel will find a silly way to retcon it because we have the multiverse.
We're still a part of making maybe the best Spider-Man, made the best Spider-Man movie ever. So I will give Sony
Sony Animation.
Well, I mean, I'm talking about this movie.
By the way, well, I actually think that Into the Spider-Verse is still my number one slot for best Spider-Man films, closely followed by No Way Home. But it's almost, to me, apples and oranges. Even though they're both dealing with the Spider-Verse, the MCU is about a celebration of the film presence of Spider-Man, where I feel like Spider-Verse is more of just the character and across all mediums. Because Spider-Man Noir was invented for a video game, Spider-Man Shattered Dimensions, which I highly recommend, on the GameCube. They had a bunch of iterations there. Spider-Man
recommendation.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Those very often.
Well, the New Way's always got our finger on the pulse.
Listen, kids, go to your local GameStop and pick up Shattered Dimensions for GameCube. You're
the
gonna
Spider-Man was available on the Nokia 6154 for about 2 weeks.
You could drop it from a parking garage.
That's
What even
right.
crack? What even crack?
And does Patrick, Ryan, Ben, do you have any closing thoughts on Spider-Man and the future of the MCU?
Real quick, Nick, I just want to know how your mother pronounced the name of the movie.
Spider-Man.
No Way Home?
Spider-Man No Way Home, hon.
No Way Home.
No Way Home. Spider-Man No Way Home.
I did, by the way.
Best Kate Winslet.
I did.
I gave it 3.8 out of 4 Huns.
I did share this with Ben a little bit. I got to see Nick for a couple of hours. 2 days after Christmas, we had a lovely masked lunch, like Eyes Wide Shut style at his house. Nick's
exactly what I was thinking.
It was not Eyes Wide Shut style. Okay,
Nick's dad could not have been.
Makes a great lube.
Like Nick and his mom had finally seen Spider-Man 3 like the day before, and I showed up, and so of course at the lunch conversation turns to Spider-Man, and Nick's dad just if he had a loaded gun there, whether it would have been to take us out or himself, he wanted out of that crashing airplane, and then he just turned to Nick, he's like, "You talked about this for 3 hours in a row the other morning." Nick's like, "It wasn't that long." I was like, "No, Nick, 3 hours. It was 3 hours long.
All right, I didn't just talk about Spider-Man. My mother asked me in preparation for the film, can you tell me what I missed? And I looked at her and I go, what you missed? You mean like you mean all of Sam Raimi's films in the Andrew Garfield, Mark Webb era? Yes. Pull up a seat.
As Nick's mom pulled a 1 mile long string out of the back of Nick's back, and he just started going.
And I did. I told her, because I had just finished freshly watching every single film.
Your dad asks, what if I tear this mask off your face?
It'd be extremely painful. You were like, not only will I basically recount all of the activities of those movies, I'll do it in iambic pentameter for you.
And I will act it out.
Please take a seat, family.
Welcome to one of my musical episodes.
My dad
Five,
saw
6, 7, 8.
Homecoming. Like, he went to the theater with us to see Homecoming, and he liked it. He loved Downey's Iron Man. But, like, he liked it. The thing about my dad is, if he didn't have an obsessive man-child for a son who didn't talk about it literally hours leading up to it, he'd probably be like, oh, yeah, I'll go see that with you. But I literally burn him out. My mom's like very eager and like very enthusiastic, and will like she'll go on the websites and she'll go down the rabbit holes. But like my dad at that point had enough. So the second we got into Spider-Man, he's like, Matt,
I moved
Can
us.
I get you this? Can I do anything but be in this room?
I moved us to the Beatles documentary, and that got things back on track for a little bit.
Very true. It was.
I'm going to make my second reference to a book I really like. And Nick, this is for you. And this is going back to the connections with like Doctor Strange, Spider-Man, things like that. So like, remember in the first Doctor Strange movie when the Sorcerer Supreme like punches him out of his body, and then he comes back and he's like, what was in that tea? Psilocybin? LSD? And she's like, nope, I'm just better at this. And the moment when Doctor Strange does that to Peter, knocks him out of his body, and then stuff happens, and he gets back in his body. He's running down the street. He's like, "Well, that was probably the coolest thing that's ever happened in my life." Like,
yep.
To me, that was a reference to a book, or like two psychedelics, where like the book How to Change Your Mind. I don't know if anybody's read that.
You didn't. You're saying you didn't see this movie on mushrooms.
We
Patrick.
get it.
I did
you
not.
read.
Oh,
good for you.
Got it. Understood.
My point is there was like a bunch of like studies back in the day where like they would give psilocybin to patients who had like terminal cancer, things like that, and they were just like, this is one of the best experiences of my life. I'm happy to die now. And like Peter just being like, whoa, don't know what that was. Probably the coolest thing that's ever happened in my life. And then he just ran down the street.
And so now he's gonna go on the road with the dead and
my dad
grow his hair out in a dreadlock.
Years. But like,
that scene though, also Patrick, like that was sort of a Thor sees Captain America lift Mjolnir moment, because no one had been conscious. like Spider-Man is a great panel where like I forgot what storyline it was. I think it may have been Secret Wars, which they're actually leading to, where they're talking about Spider-Man and like he was the best of us, but he never knew it. There were characters that had more power. There were characters that are maybe even better known, but it's sort of the consensus when you talk about like football teams have their team leader, and it might not necessarily be the quarterback, but there's that one player on the team that really like gets everybody and keeps them together. That's Spider-Man. And I think that was their way of kind of showing that he has this sort of inner character, and he's able to overcome even magic by just being who he is. But that was, I don't know what they call it. Yeah, well, and also a coming of age for the Spider Sense. It was like it was a
true, because like in the previous movie he like struggled. He was just like trying to find it, Like it would show up when he was unconscious, if you will, of it. But when he tried to find it, he couldn't do it. And then when he was booted out into the like a different plane of consciousness, he was just like, boom, there it is. Unconsciously, he's pulling off the Peter tingle.
That's funny. Maybe, you could make an argument that interaction with Strange is what like awakened the spider sense. But in Raimi's, like, and in the comics, it goes off and he immediately looks to his left or he immediately looks to his right. In this version,
with like
these
like lines around his head.
The heat lines. But in this version, it's like this slow burn, like this horror, almost like Psycho-esque, Vertigo, slow burn spider sense that I loved. It's a different depiction that we've ever seen, I think.
I'm just going to go ahead and pull a Nick's dad here. I don't know what the fuck you guys are talking about.
Spider sense.
Please stop talking about Spider-Man.
Spider sense.
I think we've
talking about drugs, Ben.
I think we've covered the movie. Yeah, if you haven't seen it, go see it. Is a crowd
Me and
pleaser.
Patrick on the astral plane, while you commoners.
You guys,
I do. Listeners, I recommend to reading the book How to Change Your Mind. It's a great book.
If you guys want to join, Patrick and Nick will be doing the Tinglers, which is going to be their own 3-hour podcast that you are encouraged to be on some sort of substance before.
The Peter Tinglers?
The Peter Tinglers. That's
what was in the back of my truck.
It works.
Peter and the Tingles.
Peter and the Tingles. Old Nick Tingle. Okay.
As we sign off, I did send a text to everybody on the text thread, which I wanted to get Ryan's reaction to.
It's so good. It's so funny.
Are we supposed to pull up our phones now?
Everybody's trying too hard to be Texas in food. I get it.
California,
I don't think that's the point of the. I don't think that's the meme.
Texas.
Anyway,
those are fighting words. Well, we'll see.
What is the movie? Okay, we'll describe it. The first panel.
Okay, no. Anyways, we want to
49ers, if you will. It says California Mexican food. Now, what film is this from?
No,
what is that?
Isn't the first one? The first one isn't it from Dirty Dozen?
Dirty Dozen, then Quick and the Dead.
No, Tombstone.
That's Tombstone. It's New Mexico food. And then the Three Caballeros is Texas Mexican
I just
food.
need to, okay. That was
Is that a Wallflowers song?
Applause on the third.
Texas Mexican food? That's a Wallflowers song?
Okay.
I didn't bring it up. I didn't bring up the meme. I feel like if you bring up a visual medium, you got to explain it to the audience. Otherwise,
I'm sure our audience is very happy that they get this closure on the podcast.
This episode.
Well, we do want to thank you.
You're probably right about that, buddy.
Eternals dropped tonight on Disney Plus. We'll see y'all later.
All right, we want to thank you so much for listening to this week's New Wave podcast. We'll be back at you with new episodes all year long. So welcome to 2022. If this is any harbinger for what is to come, God have mercy on all our souls.
2022.
We'll talk to you next time. Cheers.